I felt the loss before I understood it. A physical ache in my chest, like something had been ripped out. I remember staring at the screen, watching numbers disappear, feeling my life tilt sideways. Years of work, every careful choice, every sacrifice, gone. Not in a fire, not in some random accident, taken, quietly, legally, by the person closest to me, the one who swore to protect me, to build a future with me. It wasn't just money that vanished that day. It was safety. It was trust. It was the version of myself that believed I was loved and secure. People say you can't come back from a loss like that. They're wrong. I didn't come back the same. And the day I accepted, that was the day your real problems quietly began. If you had looked at me from the outside, you would have seen a woman who had done everything right. Steady job, modest apartment, careful savings, a marriage that looked normal enough in photos, smiling faces at weddings, vacations with matching sunglasses, anniversary dinners with candles we blew out together. I was the reliable one, the person everyone called when something needed to be read before signing. I grew up watching my parents struggle with forms and policies and fine print, and somewhere along the way, I became the translator between their world and the world of paper. Maybe that's why I chose accounting. Numbers behaved better than people. They followed rules. If something didn't match, there was always a reason. You just had to look closely enough. In relationships, I was the same, careful, observant. I didn't fall in love easily, but when I did, I committed completely. I believed in loyalty the way some people believed in fate. My husband used to say that I was too serious about everything. He meant it as a joke, mostly. He was warmer than me, more relaxed. Where I double-checked, he shrugged. Where I planned, he improvised. It felt like a balance at first. My structure, his spontaneity, my lists, his laughter. I trusted him slowly, in layers. Not with grand declarations, but with small permissions. Here, hold my passwords. Here, use my card. Here, sign this for me if I'm late from work. Little things that didn't feel dangerous at the time. I think that's what people don't understand about trust. It doesn't arrive all at once. It's built from hundreds of tiny moments where nothing goes wrong. My relationships reflected that. With my parents, I was the steady daughter. With my siblings, the one who reminded them of deadlines and doctor appointments. With friends, the quiet listener who remembered what they'd said months ago when they'd already forgotten. No one would have described me as naive. Careful, yes. Sensible, yes. But not naive. That's the part that still stings. The early warning signs were almost invisible because they didn't fit the story I'd written about us. They started with his phone. At first, it was just more notifications than usual. Messages at odd hours. He'd tilt the screen away, answer quickly, say, "Work stuff, boring," and slip the phone back in his pocket. I believed him. People have work chats. Colleagues. Clients. I had them too. Then came the new business idea. He called it an opportunity. A friend from college, a small venture, something that could change things for us. His eyes shone when he talked about it. He used words like expansion and growth and next level. I asked the questions I was trained to ask. What's the capital? Who are the partners? Where's the contract? He'd smile, ruffle my hair like I was being cute. That's why I love you. You're such an auditor. Don't worry, I won't sign anything stupid. He opened a new current account for business use. Different bank, different branch. He said he didn't want to mix it with our household expenses. It sounded reasonable. It even sounded responsible. When I offered to help set up a basic system for tracking his inflows and outflows, he waved it off. "This is my side of things," he said lightly. You already carry so much. Let me handle this one. On the surface, that sounded kind, considerate even. But slowly, a pattern formed. Money became the one topic he didn't want to talk about in detail. He liked big-picture conversations, what we'd do when things take off, where we'd travel, what we'd buy for my parents. But he sidestepped the small facts. If I asked, "How did the meeting go?" he'd answer. If I asked, "How much did they commit?" his eyes would slide away. At first, I told myself this was just difference in personality. I liked specifics. He liked vibes. Not everyone communicated the same way. Marriage required compromise. That's what people said. So I adjusted. The trip started next, short ones. An overnight here, 2 days there. Client visit, supplier check, potential investor. The reasons changed, but the bag by the door stayed the same. Each time, he'd assure me it was nothing to worry about. Each time he'd come home with something in his hands, a box of sweets, a scarf, a new kitchen gadget I'd mentioned once, as if the gifts were punctuation marks to the gaps he was creating. There were other small things. He began suggesting that certain bills be paid from his side instead of our joint account. The internet, some groceries, the occasional electricity bill. "I've got this one," he'd say. "Don't add it to your spreadsheet." Anyone else would have been happy to hear that. Less burden, after all. A generous partner. But over time, a dull unease settled in my chest. One I couldn't name without sounding ungrateful, even to myself. Then came the letter. It arrived on an ordinary Tuesday, tucked in with the usual pile of envelopes, utility bills, a takeout menu, a glossy flyer, a white, unassuming envelope with my name printed neatly on the front. The bank logo in the corner wasn't one I recognized from our accounts. I almost tossed it aside, assuming it was just another offer. Some promotion for a credit card I didn't want. But my habit of checking everything made me slide my thumb under the flap and open it. I remember the exact feeling as my eyes moved down the page. At first, confusion, a polite salutation, a courtesy reminder about my overdraft facility. My overdraft. Then a line about my continued usage and a gentle recommendation to reduce the outstanding amount to avoid further charges. My heart started to beat louder, as if my body recognized the danger before my mind caught up. There was a number printed there, not small, not huge enough to feel surreal, just heavy. The kind of figure that doesn't ruin lives instantly, but quietly shifts them off course. I read the letter again, then again. The account type, joint. The names, mine and his. The date it was opened. I felt the world narrow down to black ink on white paper. At the bottom, there was a photocopy of the account opening form for my records. And there it was, my signature. Almost. To a stranger, it would have looked perfect. The same looping S, the same slant, the same overall shape. But I knew my own hand like I knew my own reflection. This version was too steady. No tiny hesitation at the end of the K. No slight upward tilt at the tail of the M. It looked like someone had practiced it, studied it, reproduced it. I sat down without realizing I'd moved. The letter trembled a little between my fingers. I laid it flat on the table, pressed my palms down beside it, as if I could hold my life in place that way. I went over everything in my head, step by step. Had I ever gone to that bank? Signed anything there? Opened a joint account outside our usual branch? No, I would have remembered. Paper was my world. I didn't forget forms. My first instinct was not to scream, not to accuse. That's not who I am. Instead, my mind switched into the same mode it did during an audit when a number didn't match. Check the source. I dialed the bank's helpline with stiff fingers, gave them my name, the account number, the reference from the letter. My voice sounded almost calm to my own ears. "Yes, ma'am," the woman said, her tone professional, unbothered. "This is a joint current account operated by you and your husband, linked overdraft facility. You are both primary holders." Both. "How long has this account been open?" I asked. She gave me the exact date, close to our last anniversary. As she spoke, my mind overlaid that date with my own memories. The dinner, the cake, the photo he'd posted of us, our fingers intertwined over melted wax. The way he'd looked at me and said, "We're just getting started." "Can you tell me the current outstanding amount?" I forced myself to ask. She read out the figure. It matched the one in the letter. Then she began to list transaction dates, amounts, fees. Debits stacked like stepping stones over the last several months. Each one was a decision made without me. I thanked her, wrote everything down on a scrap of paper because that's what I do, even when my hands are cold and unsteady. After I hung up, I stared at the numbers I'd written, the dates, the neatly aligned figures. For a strange moment, it all looked like someone else's life. Then the realization settled, heavy and unavoidable. It was my name on that account. My credit. My identity used as collateral for something I knew nothing about. Not by a thief in the night. Not by a stranger with my wallet. By the man who slept next to me, with his arm thrown over my waist, his breathing slow and even, while I lay awake planning our savings targets for the year. I picked up the photocopied form again and traced the fake version of my own signature with my eyes. The familiar curves made foreign, and in that quiet kitchen, with the afternoon light slanting across the table and the fridge humming softly behind me, a single thought hit me so hard it took my breath away. He had crossed a line I didn't even know I needed to draw. For a long time after the letter, I just sat there, listening to the fridge hum and the clock tick on the wall. It's strange the way your body keeps doing normal things, breathing, blinking, adjusting your posture, while your mind is standing on the edge of something you don't understand. I folded the letter carefully, like it was fragile, and slipped it back into the envelope. Then I put it inside an old recipe book on the shelf. Not because I was hiding it from him yet. I think I was hiding it from myself. The rest of the day moved in fragments. I made tea and forgot to drink it. I put rice on the stove and almost let it burn. When my phone buzzed with a message from my mother asking if I could look at some pension papers for my father, I typed, "Of course," automatically. Of course. I washed dishes. I answered an email from work. I checked my siblings' group chat. All the small, ordinary things of my life. And under all of it, a low, constant buzzing in my chest. By the time he came home that evening, I had decided one thing. I wouldn't confront him yet. That might sound cowardly. Maybe it was. But I know myself. When I'm blindsided, I don't shout. I shut down. And I didn't want to walk into a conversation with only one piece of paper and my shock. I needed to know the extent of it. If this was one account, there could be more. While he talked about traffic and laughed at some joke from a colleague, I nodded at the right moments, watched him move around our kitchen like nothing had shifted. He kissed my cheek. I let him. My skin felt like it belonged to someone else. That night, he slept easily. I lay beside him, staring at the ceiling in the dark, listening to his breathing. My mind did what it always does. It made a list. First, the facts. Then, what I didn't know. In the morning, after he left for a follow-up meeting, I made coffee and opened my laptop. My hands were steady now. It felt like preparing for an audit, except this time, I was the client, and the auditor, and the suspect all at once. I logged into every bank we used, downloaded statements, month by month, account by account, my neat world of numbers laid bare. The first twist came quickly. On my personal credit card portal, a small banner popped up. Congratulations on your approved limit enhancement on your second card. Second card. I only had one. My pulse picked up. I clicked through. There it was. A companion card issued 6 months ago. Same credit line, same bank, different last 4 digits. Listed as active. I scrolled through the transactions. Restaurant bills in parts of the city I rarely went to. Hotel charges, electronics, clothing, cash withdrawals. Amounts just low enough to blend in, spread over weeks. Every statement ended the same way. Minimum amount paid, remaining balance carried forward, interest applied. The total outstanding wasn't as high as the overdraft, but it added another layer to the same pattern. He hadn't just used my name to open one account. He'd built a small, hidden world of debt around me, each piece tucked where he assumed I would never look. For a moment, I wondered if I had missed emails, calls, messages. Maybe the bank had tried to tell me. Maybe I had been careless. Then I checked the contact details. The notification email for this second card was not mine. It was a new address, created with my first and last name and a number at the end. Subtle. Close enough that any human error could be blamed. But not mine. The phone number listed was 1 digit off from my real number. I stared at the screen, feeling my mouth go dry. He hadn't just taken advantage of my trust. He'd anticipated my habits. He knew I read everything. So he'd created a version of me, close enough to pass a casual glance, far enough to keep me in the dark. I sat back in the chair and let that sink in. For years, I had told myself no one knew me like he did. That was part of what intimacy meant. Now that same knowledge felt like a weapon he'd turned in my direction. I printed the statements and stacked them under the overdraft letter. The pile grew heavier. Next, I opened our joint savings account. This was the one I'd always considered my safety net. My cushion against emergencies, my just-in-case fund. I knew the approximate balance by heart. I checked it every few weeks just to reassure myself there was something solid under our feet. The number on the screen was lower than it should have been. Not dramatically, not emptied, just drained. Like someone had been quietly scooping water out of a bucket in the dark. I went through the statements line by line. There they were, transfers labeled self, regular, modest, but consistent. 3 months ago, 5 months ago, 8. Each one on a day when I remembered him saying he'd cover the bills this month or already paid for groceries. He hadn't been paying from his side. He'd been paying from this, our side, my side. The downside of being careful is that you remember everything. A date would jump out and I'd remember what we'd done that day. The movie we'd watched, the fight we'd had, the thing he'd said to calm me down. He had taken money out of the account the week I went to visit my parents, telling me, "Don't worry about expenses, I've got us." He had taken money the morning after we'd argued about him being secretive with his business contacts, then made up with breakfast in bed. Each transaction was threaded through memories I'd thought were tender, supportive, loving. I checked the authorization logs. Several transfers had been done online using my login. I tried to remember if I'd given him my password. Had I? We'd shared devices, shared Wi-Fi. He'd watched me type it in countless times. A hot wave of shame washed through me. How could I not have noticed? How many times had I told my clients never to share passwords, never to leave sessions open? I enforced those rules at work. At home, I'd let them slide in the name of closeness. I was the one who always preached caution. And here I was, realizing the biggest risks to my stability were sleeping under the same roof. I pulled my credit report next. It took a few minutes to load. I watched the spinning icon, feeling like I was waiting for test results I already knew would be bad. The report appeared, neat and clinical. My existing accounts, my card, my mortgage. And then, another line. A business loan, medium-sized, opened in the name of Malik Enterprises. Status, delayed payments. Co-guarantor, me. I had never heard of Malik Enterprises in my life. I clicked through the details. The registered address was our home. The contact person listed, my husband. Owner, him. Guarantor, me. Under relationship, a small note. Spouse, financial controller. I almost laughed at that. Financial controller. I read the accompanying scanned declaration. There was my name, typed neatly under a line that said, I, the undersigned, agree to act as guarantor. And below it, my signature. Or rather, his version of it. By then, the shock felt almost familiar, like a bruise being pressed again and again. Still painful, but not surprising. But this was different. This wasn't just him spending money recklessly. This was him tying my name, my future earnings, to something I had zero knowledge of. If that loan went bad, and from the delayed status, it already was, who would the bank come after? Me. I imagined calls at work, letters, legal action. My careful, boring, stable life dragged into a mess I hadn't chosen. For the first time, a thin line of fear cut through the anger and the numbness. My job depended on my record, my credibility. If any of this touched my professional standing, it wasn't just my savings at risk. It was my career. I printed that too. The stack on the table grew fatter, my life compressed into pages of transactions and forged lines. I told myself to stop, to breathe, to wait before digging further. But there is a point in any investigation where stopping halfway is worse than going on. I thought of the evenings he'd come home flushed with excitement, talking about big clients, big numbers, and his network. The times he'd mentioned my qualification in passing to others. She's an accountant, you know. She keeps me honest. A new, unwelcome thought crept in. What if he hadn't just used my name on bank forms? I went to my work email and searched my own name. Then I opened my personal one and did the same. In one of the older folders, half forgotten, I found a set of auto-forwarded messages from the tax portal. I had set up alerts to track any filing made under my ID. Most of them were my own returns. A few were old client-related messages from before I joined my current firm. And then, there was something else. An alert from 6 months ago. Acknowledgement of filing for Malik Enterprises, certified by... My stomach clenched. I did not remember certifying anything for Malik Enterprises. The portal showed a login date and time. I checked my calendar. At that exact hour, I had been in a training session at my office, in a conference room with 20 other people. I wasn't anywhere near that system. I clicked on the attached PDF. The document opened slowly, line by line, like it was revealing itself reluctantly. There was the business's name, the figures, the declaration at the bottom. I, certified accountant, confirm that these statements present a true and fair view. My name, my professional registration number, and a digital signature that, to any examiner, would look identical to every other filing I'd submitted in my career. Except I hadn't touched it. The air felt thin. If the authorities decided to audit that company, they would see my name on every line that mattered. I would be their first call. Their first suspect if anything was wrong. I scrolled down. At the bottom, in the metadata, I saw the email address used to register the account. It wasn't mine. It was that almost mine address again. My name with an extra number, a shadow version of my identity, and next to recovery phone number, his. My throat tightened. I went suddenly, inexplicably cold. There was a small, forwarded email attached to the original alert, a brief, casual message from him to one of his partners. Done. Used Sarah's ID for certification. She's an accountant. Makes it look solid. She's my wife, Yar. It's fine. She won't create any problems. I read that line 3 times. She won't create any problems. Not she knows. Not she agreed. Not even we. Just a quiet, absolute confidence that I would remain obedient background noise in his story. That my name, my qualifications, my entire professional life were just tools he could use as he pleased. I sat there, staring at the words. It wasn't just my money he'd taken. It was my work, my reputation, my future. And on paper, to the rest of the world, it looked like I was the one who had helped him do it. The morning after I found that email, I woke up before the alarm. He was still asleep, one arm flung across my side of the bed. From a distance, nothing about him looked dangerous. Just a tired man, mouth slightly open, breathing evenly. I stared at the ceiling and felt a steady, unfamiliar calm settle over me. Fear and shock had burned through me the night before. What was left now was clarity, not comfort. Just a hard, cold understanding. If I did nothing, his lies would become my reality on paper. I slid out of bed carefully and made tea like any other day. He shuffled into the kitchen, kissed my forehead, complained about being exhausted. I listened, nodded, asked nothing. By the time he left, his briefcase in hand, tie slightly crooked, I had already decided on my first step. I went to work, not because I could pretend nothing had changed, but because I needed the one thing I still trusted: process. At 10 a.m., I knocked on the glass door of my department head's office. He looked up, surprised. I rarely came in without an appointment. "Got a minute?" I asked. He waved me in. "Of course." I closed the door behind me, sat down, folded my hands to stop them from fidgeting. "I need to report a potential misuse of my professional credentials," I said, just like that. No build-up. The words tasted metallic. He straightened. "By a client." I shook my head. "By my husband." Silence. I slid the printed documents across the desk. The credit report, the business loan details, the tax filing acknowledgement. My name circled in red ink. His typed email to his partner, printed at the bottom of the stack. He read slowly. I watched his eyes move from line to line, his expression changing in small, controlled shifts. When he finished, he sat back, exhaled. "How much of this did you authorize?" "None of it," I said. The digital signature on that return wasn't placed by me. The guarantor form wasn't signed by me. The account applications weren't signed by me. "You're sure?" "Yes." He knew me well enough not to ask that twice. "We'll need to log this formally," he said. "With compliance, and you'll need to protect your registration." "I know." He looked at me for a long moment. "You understand this could become a criminal matter." "I also understand," I said quietly, "that if I stay silent, it becomes my crime." He nodded once, reached for the phone. That was how the first official record was created. Not in a shouting match at home, not in a dramatic confrontation. In a small, glass-walled office with a pot plant in the corner and the sound of printers humming outside. Compliance came in. We went through everything again. Dates, documents, my access logs. I signed a statement describing exactly what I had discovered and what I had not done. Facts, nothing else. By lunch, my firm had notified the professional body that my credentials might have been misused without consent. An advisory note went on my file. Potential identity fraud, self-reported, under investigation. It wasn't pleasant. It felt like a stain, even with the explanation attached. But it was my stain, owned by me, not handed to me from someone else's mess. In the afternoon, I took a half day and went to the main branch of the bank that had issued the overdraft. The officer behind the desk smiled politely, the way they do with everyone. When I explained why I was there, the smile faded, but the professionalism remained. "I believe an account was opened in my name without my consent," I said, "and that the signature on the application was forged." She asked for ID. I handed it over. She compared it with the photocopied form I'd brought. "I'll need to escalate this," she said. "There will be an internal investigation. We may involve the fraud department." "I want my name removed from that account," I said, "and from any other product I did not explicitly sign for." "That will depend on the findings," she replied carefully. "But your objection is now on record." She stamped my complaint with an incoming reference number. The sound of the stamp hitting paper was oddly satisfying. One by one, I did the same with everything else. A call to the credit card company. I did not request a second card. That email address is not mine. Complaint number issued. Card frozen. A written notice to the business loan division. I dispute the authenticity of my signature as guarantor. I request a handwriting and digital trail analysis. Acknowledgement received. An email to the tax portal support. My professional ID appears on filings I did not authorize. Please log an incident and flag any entity linked to my number for review. Automated reply first. Human reply later. At each step, I was calm, polite, precise. I didn't use words like monster or betrayal or ruined. I used words like unauthorized, contested, misused, forged, the language of systems. By the time I got home, the day felt like it had lasted a week. He was on the sofa, scrolling on his phone. "You're late," he said casually. "Everything okay at work?" I hung my bag on the usual hook. "Yes, busy day." He grinned. "Welcome to my world." I made dinner. We ate. He talked about a potential new client. I nodded, placed food on his plate, cleared up when we were done. On the surface, nothing had changed. Underneath, multiple systems now had his actions on file. 3 days later, the first crack appeared. He called me in the middle of the day. I was at my desk, reconciling a client's ledger. "Hey," he said, a tightness in his voice I wasn't used to. "Did you mess with the overdraft account?" I paused. "What do you mean?" "They've frozen it," he said. "Some internal investigation. They're asking questions about signatures, about authorizations. Did you complain about something?" "Yes," I said simply. "I did." Silence on the line. I could almost hear him recalibrating. "Why didn't you talk to me first?" he asked, voice low. "I needed to talk to the bank first," I replied. "They're the ones who have my name on forms I didn't sign." He exhaled, a sharp, frustrated sound. "Sarah, you're going to make this so complicated. It was temporary, I told you that. You're blowing it up for no reason." I looked at the spreadsheet in front of me. Numbers, neat and obedient. "I'm at work," I said. "We can discuss this later." I hung up before he could respond. No shouting, no scene. Just a simple refusal to absorb his version of reality this time. That afternoon, the credit card company called too. They asked standard verification questions, then informed me that they were launching a fraud investigation into the companion card and would be contacting the secondary user, my husband, for clarification. Please note, the woman said, any proven misuse may affect his profile with us and associated institutions. Understood, I said. The second twist came a week later from a direction I wasn't expecting. One of his so-called business partners emailed me directly. The subject line was brief. Need to clarify something urgent. The body was even shorter. He says you consented. Did you? Call me. He attached a scanned partnership proposal. In the financial oversight section, my name appeared in bold. Internal auditor, Sarah Malik, CPA. There was a one-line bio under it. Oversees all financial compliance for the firm. I hadn't seen this document before. I called the number in the signature. The man on the other end sounded tired. Sarah, thank you for calling. I know this is awkward. I saw your email, I said. What exactly did he say I consented to? He told us you were on board, the man replied. That you were aware of the structures, the loans, the tax filings, that you were basically handling it. We trusted that because you're his wife and an accountant. I was not aware, I said, of any of it. Long pause. We just got notices from the bank and revenue department, he said slowly. Flagging irregularities, mentioning possible forged authorizations. They shared copies. Your firm has already told the board you reported misuse, so I needed to hear it from you. You're hearing it from me, I said. I did not sign those documents. I did not certify your statements. My name was used without my knowledge. I didn't add judgment. I didn't say, you should have checked. You should have called me sooner. The facts were enough. He exhaled. This is bad. For you? I asked quietly. Or for him? For all of us, he said. But mostly for him. We trusted his word. Investors did too. And now, if they see this... He trailed off. Whatever you need in terms of verification from my side, I said. I'll provide, but I won't protect him. I wouldn't ask you to, he replied. Honestly, I'm sorry. He sounded like a man realizing he'd backed the wrong horse. The third revelation was more personal, and it came from inside my own home. A few days later, while folding laundry, I knocked his phone off the bed by accident. It landed face up. A message preview flashed before the screen dimmed. Bro, you're finished if she really talked to her office, someone had written. You said she wouldn't go against you. What were you thinking? He was in the shower. His passcode was one I knew. He'd chosen something easy for both of us to remember. For years, I hadn't used it. That afternoon, I did. The chat was with a group labeled Core Team. I scrolled up. There he was, joking a month ago. Relax, guys. Sarah is my built-in auditor. As long as I keep home happy, no one's touching us. Someone had replied with a laughing emoji and, best to keep the wife fed and blind, hon? Later, after my complaints had gone in, he'd written, She's overreacting. I'll calm her down. She won't take it outside. She never does. She never does. Seeing myself reduced to that sentence in the middle of their private strategy made something in my chest go very still. The others weren't kind, but they were blunt. You used her card, her name, her ID, one message said. If this goes legal, you're the only one exposed. We kept our distance on paper, you didn't. Another. Investors are asking questions. They're nervous. They Googled her firm. They know she's clean. If she's not backing you, they'll assume you're dirty. Reading it, I realized something quietly satisfying. The same careful reputation that had once made me useful to him was now becoming a wall between us in everyone else's eyes. That evening he came home late. No gift this time. No easy smile. He held a thick envelope in his hand. "Some letters came for you," I said, nodding at the table where I'd placed a small stack earlier. "Not those," he said. "This." He handed me the envelope. It was from a regulatory authority, addressed to both of us. I opened it. The language was formal, measured, devastating in its simplicity. They were initiating a preliminary inquiry into Malik Enterprises. They had noted discrepancies in filings. They had received a report from my firm about potential misuse of my professional ID. They requested documents, explanations, and a personal appearance from him on a specified date. My name appeared in the letter only in 2 places, once as the person who had reported the misuse, and once as someone they might contact for verification. "You did this," he said quietly. "I told the truth," I replied. His jaw tightened. "Do you understand what this could do to our name? To my standing? People talk, Sarah." I looked at the letter again. "They will talk more," I said, "if you ignore this." He didn't shout. He didn't slam anything. He just sank into a chair and put his head in his hands. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. The 4th and hardest exposure came at work, 2 days before his scheduled appearance. My department head called me into a meeting room. A representative from the regulator was there too. They had a folder open on the table. "We're sharing this with you because your name appears multiple times," the representative said. "You are not under investigation, but we need your confirmation on certain points." He slid the folder toward me. On top was a printed email thread, from him, to their office, trying to explain. He had written, "My wife was aware of all business activities. Any misunderstanding arises from miscommunication at home. We can resolve this privately." Attached were screenshots of messages he'd sent me over the past year. Random ones, out of context. "Going to see a client? Don't wait up. Need to move some funds? We'll fix later. Can you share your PAN details again? Bank needs them." Beside each, he'd written in his explanation, "Proof of her knowledge." "If you read them together," the representative said, "they appear to show your awareness. Separately, they are ambiguous. We'd like to hear, in your own words, whether you understood that your details were being used as they were." I looked at the screenshots, messages that had once seemed so casual, so harmless, now rearranged to build a case against my ignorance. "No," I said, "I did not understand." He never said, "I am opening a loan in your name." He never said, "I am certifying accounts as you." He never explained the scope. If he had, I would have refused. "Would you be willing to put that in writing?" the man asked. "Yes." As I signed yet another statement, it struck me how quietly his lies were collapsing. Not with fireworks, not with a dramatic confession, just email by email, document by document, timestamp by timestamp. He had built an entire world on the assumption that I would stay silent, that I would prioritize our name over my own reality, that I would never take what I knew into rooms where his charm meant nothing and signatures were examined calmly under fluorescent lights. Now those same rooms were dissecting his story down to the last comma, and all I had done was stop protecting him. The day of his hearing, the house felt like a hotel lobby after checkout. Same furniture, same walls, but empty in a way it hadn't been before. He put on his best shirt, the one he wore to weddings and serious meetings. He stood by the mirror, adjusting his collar, then turned to me. "You're coming, right?" he asked. It was the first time he'd asked me for anything directly since the letters started arriving. Before that, he'd tried charm, then irritation, then silence. Now there was something else in his voice. Not humility, not yet. Just the thin edge of fear. "I'm going later," I said. "They want to speak to you first." He watched me for a moment. "If you just tell them we misunderstood each other, this will calm down. They're treating it like a big deal because you work where you do. You can fix that." I poured tea into 2 cups, my movements slow. "I already told them the truth," I said. "I can't untell it." He took the cup from me, fingers brushing mine. Once, that small touch would have made my chest warm. Now, it felt like contact with someone I used to know in another life. "You're my wife, Sarah," he said, voice low. "This doesn't just affect me. It affects us, our name, our families." "I'm not the one who put our name on false documents," I said quietly. He flinched, just a little. We drank tea in silence after that. He left first. I watched him go from the window, walking down the street, shoulders squared like he could still bluff his way through this. A few hours later, I arrived at the building where the hearing was being held. It wasn't a grand courtroom, just another anonymous government office with beige walls and plastic chairs. I saw him through a glass partition, seated at a table, papers spread out in front of him. A man from the regulator sat opposite, another beside him, both taking notes. One of his former partners was there too, expression stiff. He didn't look at me. They asked me to wait in a nearby room until it was my turn. I sat in a chair with metal arms and listened, faintly, to the muffled sound of voices. No shouting, just the flat cadence of questions and answers, dates, names. Who authorized this? Who prepared that? When did she sign? Where is the original? When they called me in, he glanced up. For a second, our eyes met. I saw something raw there. Anger, yes, but under it, disbelief. As if he still couldn't quite accept that I had walked into a room on the other side of him. The questions for me were simple. Did you sign this? No. Did you authorize anyone to sign it on your behalf? No. Did you receive any financial benefit from these loans? No. Were you paid for certifying any of these statements? I did not certify them. I answered everything calmly. My voice sounded steady in that plain, echoing room. They showed me more documents than I'd seen before. Partnership agreements, side letters, forwarded messages where he'd written things like, "Sarah is handling the numbers. She's strict, but she's with us." "In your view," one of the officers asked, "would any competent accountant have declined to be associated with these filings?" "Yes," I said, "if they'd seen the true picture." He stared at the table. When it was over, they asked me to step out again. I didn't see the rest of his session. I didn't need to. The facts were already stacked higher than anything either of us could say. The full truth came out over the next few months, not in one dramatic reveal, but in a series of letters, reports, and carefully worded statements. The regulator's findings were blunt. He had forged my signature on multiple financial documents, used my professional credentials without consent to lend credibility to filings, opened and operated credit lines in my name and in joint structures based on falsified authorizations, misled investors by claiming that I was overseeing and approving his activities. They traced logins, IP addresses, email headers, the fake account he'd created in my almost name. The pattern was clear. His partners, once they understood how exposed he was, distanced themselves on paper. They handed over everything they had. Emails where he bragged about using Sarah's ID, messages where he assured them I was on board, Notes showing he'd been warned about the risks and brushed them off. The investors pulled out. Those who could. Those who couldn't began legal action of their own. Malik Enterprises folded, not with a public announcement, but with a quiet entry in a database. Registration revoked, under investigation. The name disappeared from the website that had once listed him as a hopeful, rising entrepreneur. The bank restructured the debts. After the handwriting analysis and digital forensics, they removed my name from the loan and overdraft, acknowledging the forgery. The liability shifted fully to him. They flagged his profile across their network. The credit card company closed the companion card, wrote off part of the loss as fraud, and blacklisted him. Professionally, he was done. No bank would loan to him without collateral now. No investor would touch his proposals with my firm's report sitting in his file. The Revenue Department's notation on his records made sure of that. Criminal charges followed. Not the sensational kind people gossip about, just a precise list. Fraud, forgery, misuse of identity, submission of false certifications. He didn't go to trial in front of cameras. There were no news vans outside. It was quieter than that. His lawyer advised him to accept a plea agreement. He received a sentence that wasn't long enough to satisfy some abstract sense of revenge, but long enough to put a permanent mark next to his name, long enough to take away his illusion of being untouchable. He called me once before he went in. The number flashed on my phone. I stared at it for a long moment, then answered. "Sarah," he said. His voice sounded smaller. "They're saying you're the main reason this got so bad." "No," I said. "The documents are the reason this got so bad." "You could have handled this at home," he said. "We could have fixed it quietly. You've destroyed everything." I thought about responding, about listing the things he had quietly destroyed long before any regulator stepped in. My savings, my sense of safety, my professional integrity, my sleep. Instead, I said, "I told the truth to people whose job is to care about it. That's all." He was silent for a long time. "I never thought you'd do this," he said finally. "I know," I replied. "That was the problem." I hung up before he could say anything else. The divorce process was almost the easiest part. By the time we went to family court, there were so many other files on him that mine was just another folder in a stack. The forged signatures, the fraud findings, the regulators' reports. They all sat there between us, impersonal and heavy. My lawyer laid everything out calmly. I wasn't asking for alimony or some spectacular settlement. I just wanted one thing: separation from his liabilities. No shared debts. No surprise claims in my name. The judge read, asked me a few questions, asked him more. When the decree came through, it was almost anticlimactic. A stamped paper, a few lines, dissolved. In the weeks after, the emotional fallout caught up with me in waves. In the supermarket, I found myself calculating prices out of habit, only this time with a strange, underlying awareness. These numbers were mine alone now, no invisible hands draining them in the background. At night, I lay in my separate, smaller apartment, listening to the unfamiliar hum of a different fridge, and replayed conversations from years back. Little things he'd said. "You worry too much. You don't trust me enough. You make problems out of nothing." I examined each memory with new eyes. I went to therapy. The first session, I sat on the edge of the chair and said, "I don't even know what I'm supposed to feel." The therapist said, "You don't have to feel anything specific. Just start with what is true." That word again. Truth had cost me a marriage, but it had given me my life back, piece by piece. Work stayed steady. There were whispers at first, of course. People always talk. Her husband did this. Her name was on that. She reported him herself. But my firm stood beside the facts they'd seen. Clients stayed. New ones came. I was assigned to cases where integrity mattered most. One day, my department head called me in and said, "We're recommending you for a promotion. You've shown judgment under pressure." I thought of all the times I'd sat in dark rooms, wondering if I'd overreacted, if I'd been too harsh, too unforgiving. "Thank you," I said simply. At home, I made new rules for myself. Separate accounts, regular checks, hard boundaries around my professional ID. My signatures became rarer, but when I put them down, I did it with full attention. I stayed in touch with my family, but I didn't share every detail. They knew enough to be protective, to be angry on my behalf. I let them. Their indignation was loud. Mine remained quiet. Sometimes, late at night, I thought about him in a small room somewhere, filling out forms with his own name this time. No one else's to lean on. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt finished. People ask, in different ways, if I regret anything. If I wish I'd handled it softer. If there was a version of this story where I could have saved the marriage and still protected myself. I turned the question over like a coin between my fingers. Maybe there was a moment early on when a different choice could have changed the path. A conversation he could have started instead of avoided. A confession he could have made before the papers piled up. But that choice was never mine. Mine came later, in a kitchen with afternoon light on the table and a letter in my hand. Then in a glass office. In a bank branch. In a hearing room. On a witness line. Again and again, I picked the only thing I had left to stand on. The record. The truth didn't roar. It didn't kick down doors. It just walked, one document at a time, from my drawer to the people whose job it was to read. He used to tell me, laughing, "You take paper too seriously, Sarah. It's just forms." My father's voice had said something different long before that. Paper remembers. He was right. In the end, I didn't destroy him. I simply stopped forgetting what the paper already knew.